trying to publish all of their research. She's very frustrated. She's not giving up. But I will tell you, I just spoke with her maybe a month or two ago, and she said, I'm going to release all of the research to you so you can begin sharing it and you can begin talking about it and do what you want with it in doTERRA. So they've let us out of that, and now we'll just start sharing it openly in doTERRA. One of the most interesting things that she discovered, I remember I was driving, and she called me on the phone, and she said, Dave, you'll never guess what I just found. And I said, okay, the holy grail in terms of infection is if we can find something that's inhibitory and find something that's cidal or killing in every sense of the word. That just doesn't exist. And then you start looking at all the different organisms that exist, and it becomes really problematic. And so that's why we did this big intensive study where we looked at every single essential oil that we had. Even if we don't offer it as a single, but it was as a blend. We broke the blend apart, we gave each one of the oils individually, and we looked at them comprehensively in this model of inhibition at Johns Hopkins. She called me with great excitement one day and she said, I found it, you'll never guess what it is. Which oil do you think is inhibitory and cidal in all the models that we tested? And so in my mind I started running through everything. Maybe it was clove, maybe it was oregano, might be thyme. Oh, it absolutely could be lemongrass. Maybe it was cinnamon. Maybe it was cassia. Maybe it was On Guard as a blend, a whole blend. And while all of those showed amazing results, do you know what the #1 oil was? Rose. And none of you would ever think that. This is one of the amazing times that we're in right now in doTERRA, is that we sometimes think there's really not much more to discover. We've really uncovered and know very, very little about the essential oils in the context of the whole. And it's why we choose the partnership and why we choose to move things forward. So think about using rose with some great enthusiasm and excitement that way. Think about neroli and rose for reducing feelings of anxiety or when we feel anxious, and you can use it in the ways that we talked about just a few moments ago. And then also think about neroli for being very supportive. We go through lots of different times in our life where we have hormonal type changes. We can encourage feelings of intimacy, for example, with neroli, but we can also improve hormone concentrations by using neroli on a regular basis. Even during the late stages of pregnancy, inflammation becomes somewhat problematic, and neroli can be very balancing and soothing and calming during that process as well. So lots of different ways that we can use it. So here's some simple ways that you can use both neroli and rose in some of the ways we talked about it. Applying them on the bottom of the feet can create a really good, sustainable, healthy cell response. We can be restorative and we can be protective of our cells, what they do metabolically, how they function, and how they communicate. Breathe the aroma of rose essential oil, for example, is very helpful for learning. Apply rose and jasmine topically to help with wound healing and any types of abrasions or skin conditions we have. And one of the things that I love about these floral oils is that they help the tissues to heal more fully. So we don't have a lot of scarring and things that develop. That develops. Think about using jasmine and rose at night for stomach acid. This becomes a real problem. Lavender is another good oil you can use in that regard too. If at night you have a lot of heartburn and you're having a lot of challenges that way, putting rose and jasmine over your stomach or using lavender a little bit internally in a capsule could be very, very helpful for you. So let's switch to jasmine real quick. Now jasmine, instead of alcohols, is comprised of a lot of esters. And esters are balancing, very relaxing, calming, ease tension within the body, and do a number of different things that can help you overcome that in a timely way. Now, don't underestimate the power of just breathing in the aroma of these essential oils. We sometimes feel like we have to become very complicated in our process. We don't. It can be as simple as just breathing in the aroma. One of the things that I like about jasmine, because it has some similarities to what we see in rose and what we see in neroli, but it has some uniqueness. And one of the unique qualities that I see associated with jasmine is that it helps to fortify, it helps to stimulate proper activity within the extracellular matrix of the skin, ECM. so collagen and fibroblast production become balanced. So here's what that really looks like. If we look at the skin, if we look at the matrix of the skin, there's three critical things. One is fibroblast production, and I've got it pointed out there. You can see where the fibroblast is. These are specialized cells that create collagen and that create elastin. And so we need good, constant, stable activity associated with those if we want our skin to look healthy. Now, one of the reasons why we add a lot of floral oils into our skincare is because of this benefit and this value. Collagen is what gives your skin its matrix, its structure. And so when we start to get a lot of wrinkles, for example, is because the collagen structure of our skin is beginning to break down. And so if we stimulate fibroblast production, we can stimulate type 1 collagen production. And then elastin is what gives your skin its elasticity. Now, I'd take my skin and I'd stretch it out, but it'd probably just flop down and stay that way for a while. So I won't stretch it out. But it's just exactly what you think it is. As you pull your skin, it has the elasticity it needs to retain its shape. Each one of those are critical for your skin to have a good, healthy appearance, but also in that matrix, what is underneath the skin, for it to be durable and to have that youthful appearance is the extracellular matrix that I just described. Think about jasmine in this context. So here's a good way to use it. Now, jasmine is not alone in that. Another favorite oil that I have is cedarwood. We use cedarwood for a lot of things, but cedarwood actually also stimulates the exact same thing. So using cedarwood and jasmine and doing direct application over the targeted area, and if you would dilute that, you know that it would hold it in those tissues, you would begin to have the enzymatic or the metabolic process develop there, and you would have the greatest benefit would become localized where you applied it. It's also really good for skin conditions. There's a lot of different types of skin conditions and irritations. Some of them involve more processes than just the skin. For example, pro-inflammatory or allergic type responses. And so when we start looking at those things in a much broader sense, like psoriasis and eczema and some of those things, think about maybe turning to these essential oils. Putting that in one of the doTERRA lotions as a base is a really good way to apply that. You get all the moisturizing that you need. Wound healing, bug bites, and then dandruff, acne directly to the skin. Jasmine is a wonderful essential oil to use that way. Here's a good way to think of these three oils in terms of the benefit that they can bring for the skin. Jasmine supports the tissue matrix, the collagen, the fibroblasts, and the elastin. Think about neroli, it soothes and it clarifies the skin. So blemishes and other challenges, neroli would be a good application model. And then lastly, I like this about rose. This makes rose a little bit unique. A lot of times, oils can be very drying, but rose is not. It has an emollient kind of activity associated with it. So it's soothing to the skin, but it's also very moisturizing to the skin. So start using those essential oils and be excited about them. Now let's talk about another floral oil. Let's talk about chamomile oil. So are you still doing okay? Yeah. I know we're going. I'm moving as fast as I can. Let's talk about chamomile essential oils. Now you're familiar with chamomile essential oils. Dave talked about Roman chamomile, and he talked about us being able to bring that to market in a sustainable way through some of the activity that we have with Esoteric right here in Europe. And so that has become a very stable product for us. You're also familiar with Deep Blue, and Deep Blue has two chamomile oils associated with it. One is blue chamomile, and blue chamomile is typically known as German chamomile. And then the other one that you see in Deep Blue that you're familiar with and we've not had as a single oil before is blue tansy. Now blue tansy is actually a chamomile oil. It comes from Morocco, and it's sometimes referred to as Moroccan chamomile. It comes from the flowers, just like each one of these do. Now, if we look at them individually, the blue tansy, the German chamomile, the Roman chamomile, sometimes I'm asked the question, why do we have so many oils that seemingly fit into the same category? Well, you can see the chemical differences that exist. For example, in blue tansy is almost all sesquiterpenes. If we look at, monoterpenes. If we look at German chamomile, it's almost all sesquiterpenes. monoterpenes. And then if we look at Roman chamomile, it's nearly all esters. And so they play different roles. Monoterpenes, here's a good way for you to classify them in your mind. Monoterpenes is anti-everything. So if you want things that would be help controlling of inflammation and proper inflammatory responses, think about blue tansy, or in this case, Moroccan chamomile. If I want to stop the process of that, sesquiterpenes, I might think about that for a sesquiterpene model. So they each play a different role. Here's another unique difference in way to think about them. Sesquiterpenes, so German chamomile, one of the reasons why it is associated with deep blue is it's long-lasting. Sesquiterpenes take much longer to metabolize, and we have greater metabolic potential. So in other words, when you use an essential oil and it gets metabolized, it doesn't just mean that it's gone. Sometimes it's metabolized into secondary, tertiary, and even more metabolites that recirculate, and you have continued and constant benefit. Sesquiterpenes have more capability of doing that than what monoterpenes do. So think about monoterpenes as fast-acting, and think about sesquiterpenes as long-lasting, if that makes some sense to you. And so blue tansy is now an oil that you're going to have here and available to you in Europe. Now, blue tansy is a little bit like Roman chamomile in that we really had to do a lot. Generally, this is a wild crafted essential oil. And this is the first time that it's been cultivated successfully. And that gives us the opportunity to have sustainability, but it also gives us the opportunity, as Dave mentioned, to be able to have prolonged control from the beginning all the way to the end process in producing and supplying this essential oil for you. Now, it's also unique because some of the monoterpenes that it has, by far, the highest content it has is something called saline and chemazoline. Now, both of those are important, and I'm showing that only to you to know that highlighted in yellow there, you can see all of the things that it encompasses: soothing, skin support, antioxidant activity, supporting of the immune system and proper immune function. It covers all of those bases, so it's a very broad profile. Far and away, however, the greatest usage of blue tansy has been for skin. And so if we break it down and get into usage, we would look at it both aromatically and topically. So good for uplifting the mood, for example, a beautiful essential oil to diffuse. And then topically, we can apply it directly to the area, maybe where we have irritations, or it can be calming and soothing to overactive tissues, so you can apply it directly in those areas too. Now, there are some who will say you can use blue tansy internally, and we're not going to say that. And the reason why we're not saying that is not because we think that there's something unduly harmful with it. We just feel like the better positioning for this essential oil is in a topical or an aromatic usage model. That's where you're going to receive the greatest benefit. And one of the reasons why is because of this beautiful blue color that you get from something known as chemazoline. Now, chemazoline is actually something that occurs during the distillation process. You take matrescine, which is another monoterpene, and because of the heat, because of the pressure, it transforms into chemazoline, and that's what gives us that beautiful blue-green color associated with the blue tansy. Now, the beautiful blue-green color poses some interesting dynamics for you. How many of you love Halloween? Come on, raise your hands. I know you do. How many of you want to go to Halloween as a Smurf? Because one of the interesting things about this is that when you apply it, it does have a tendency to turn your skin blue. Now, I'll use my wife as an example. She puts it on and it just dissipates and it's gone immediately. I put it on and it's around for a little while. Not for a long while, but it stays for a little bit. Don't be alarmed if you use this and you get a little bit of bluing of the skin. It's not permanent, I promise you it's not. Unless you want it to be, then you just, I don't know, get a spray bottle and spray yourself during Halloween so you're constantly infused with that. It'll dissipate over time. But here's some things you can do to lessen that effect. So consider dilution. Once again, this is meant to be primarily a topical application, so diluting is good because it allows us to hold it within those tissues. And then add 1 or 2 drops to doTERRA Skincare, or blend it with other oils, and you see that gluing effect go completely away. Have any of you been using Blue Tansy? Yeah, you love it, right? It's a wonderful oil, and it's especially good for skincare. A beautiful combination is jasmine and Blue Tansy together. So if you've not tried mixing those, that would be something that you can do as well. Here's some ways that you can use those. Now, I did talk a little bit about immunity. I did talk a little bit about being supportive and soothing to the tissues. I like using Blue Tansy with lemongrass and marjoram or cinnamon. And the reason why is it gives it this really warming effect. It's more deeply penetrating and a little bit longer lasting, a little more soothing to the tissues if you have irritation that way. Or combined with cedarwood and frankincense, and I mentioned jasmine as well. Geranium would be another one that you can use for skin applications, for targeted skin applications. So think about using the Blue Tansy in those ways. Let's talk about one more oil real quickly.